Look at that ragged old jacket, must have fished it out of a dumpster. The teenager's voice rang out sharp and mocking. The old man flinched but said nothing. He just clutched the frayed collar of his faded military jacket a little tighter. People laughed, some pulled out their phones, but 10 minutes later a military convoy pulled up outside the diner. A Major Griffin stepped out, his uniform crisp, his face solemn without a word. He crossed the lot, stood before the old man and snapped a perfect salute. If you believe silent respect speaks louder than insults, comment honored. Below, the old man shuffled across the cracked sidewalk, his boots scuffing the concrete, each step measured, deliberate, as if the ground might shift beneath him without warning. His breath fogged in the crisp morning air, his jacket hung loosely from his thin frame, patches of threadbare fabric, catching the morning light. Fade green, once vibrant with purpose, now dulled by decades. A patch on the shoulder, barely legible, whispered of battles long past. The diner's neon sign buzzed overhead. Harper's Family Restaurant promised warmth within its weathered walls. The door chimed softly as he pushed it open. Inside the diner, the smell of coffee and frying bacon filled the air. Conversations hummed, silverware clinked against plates, and somewhere a child laughed, normal sounds that still sometimes startled him. He chose a booth by the window, ordered just a black coffee, his wallet worn and thin, opened carefully. He counted coins with precision. The waitress gave him a polite but distant smile. Coming right up, she said, already turning toward another table, her eyes never quite meeting his. Sunlight streamed through the smudged window, casting long shadows across the laminated menu. He didn't need to look. He ordered the same thing every Thursday morning. A group of teenagers entered, loud and restless. Weekends and school gossip tumbled from their lips. Energy crackled around them, the luxury of those who've never known real danger. One pointed at the old man and snickered, his finger jabbed the air like a weapon. Check out that jacket, looks like it survived a dumpster fire. Laughter rippled across the diner.
Yeah.
Sharp, cruel, unthinking heads turned, eyes narrowed, smiles spread. The old man lowered his gaze, focusing on his chipped coffee cup. The ceramic was warm against his weathered palms. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the cup, not from the mockery he'd endured worse, but from memories that never stopped haunting him. Memories flooded in, not of humiliation, but of brothers lost, of promises made. Rice paddies turned red, helicopter rotors cutting humid air, a hand reaching out then falling limp. His jacket wasn't just fabric, it was history stitched together with sacrifice. Each frayed thread held a story. No teenager could comprehend. The coffee tasted bitter. He drank it anyway. A second teenager joined the first, emboldened by the absence of consequences. My grandpa was in the army too, but man, even his stuff from the attic looks better than that rag. The old man's eyes closed briefly, in shame, but in quiet endurance. The waitress refilled his cup without asking, her movements mechanical. She heard the comments but chose comfortable silence. Outside, cars passed, people hurried to jobs, to schools, to lives made possible by men who once wore jackets like his. He straightened his collar, a habit from another life. Dignity couldn't be taken. It could only be surrendered, and he had surrendered nothing. Not in war, not now. One teenager edged closer to his booth, confidence fueled by peer approval. He leaned against the table, invading the old man's space with casual cruelty. Hey Gramps, how much you want for that ragged thing? Halloween's coming. His voice carried through the diner. His friends snickered, phones raised to capture potential humiliation. Laughter erupted louder this time, not just from the teenagers, adults, to a businessman in a crisp suit chuckled behind his newspaper. A mother hushed her curious child but smiled nonetheless. A few customers chuckled behind their menus, safe in their anonymity, comfortable in their judgment. The waitress pretended not to notice. She wiping the same spot on the counter repeatedly, her eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Complicity and silence. Maybe it's the only thing he owns. Another teen called out, fake sympathy wrapped around mockery, somehow crueler than outright derision. The diner manager glanced over, a frown slightly, then returned to his clipboard. Business trumped decency, intervention might disrupt the morning rush. The old man didn't respond. No anger flushed his weathered face and no shame bent his shoulders. He sipped his coffee slowly, eyes distant, hearing a different kind of roar, the roar of battlefields long past, gunfire, screams, orders shouted over chaos. The memories never faded, unlike the fabric that sparked such amusement. He reached inside the jacket and touched the faded ribbon sewn into the lining. Purple heart given for blood spilled in a jungle few could find on a map today. Did you find that in a military surplus store, Grandpa? Or was it actually from a war? Another voice, another barb, An elderly woman at the counter shook her head disapprovingly, but said nothing. Her discomfort didn't translate to action. Teenage girl joined her friends but hung back slightly, something in her eyes, recognition perhaps, or simply humanity, made her hesitate. "My brother's in the Marines," she said softly, but her friends didn't hear, or didn't care. The old man noticed. He nodded once, acknowledging her unspoken respect. The ringleader, emboldened by continued laughter, reached out toward the jacket sleeve. "Let's see what war medals a coat like this has earned." His fingers, inches from touching sacred memory, froze midair. Outside engines rumbled low, powerful, purposeful, not the casual arrival of breakfast patrons. Dust swirled in the parking lot. Sunlight caught in the cloud, creating momentary halos around approach vehicles. A military convoy to Humvees and a black SUV rolled up to the curb. They parked with precision, engines shutting off in perfect sequence. Diners pressed their faces to the glass. Curiosity replacing mockery. Forks hovered midway to mouths. Conversations paused mid-sentence. The teenager retreated slightly, uncertainty replacing bravado. "Who called the army?" someone whispered. The old man hadn't moved. He hadn't reached for a phone. He hadn't called for rescue or retribution. Doors opened simultaneously. Boots hit pavement with synchronized purpose. Uniformed men and women emerged. Face serious, posture perfect, each movement deliberate, practiced, respectful. A major stepped out. Decorated chest, gleaming medals and ribbons caught the morning light, similar to ones hidden inside a faded jacket. His gaze scanned the diner, ignoring the teenagers, the laughter, the judgment. He was searching for something specific. The old man sat straighter, an instinct born of years under command. His trembling hands steadied. The major nodded once, seeing what others had missed. The man beneath the jacket. He marched straight inside, boots echoing sharply against the tile. Each step declared purpose, each movement demanded attention. The bell above the door chimed, somehow solemn now instead of cheerful. The diner fell silent. Coffee stopped pouring, food stopped cooking. Even breathing seemed to pause. The teenager who had reached for the jacket backed away, colliding with his friends. Their laughter died, replaced by nervous glances. The major's eyes never wavered from the old man in the booth by the window. History recognized. History, service acknowledged, service. The old man met his gaze without flinching. Brothers, separated by decades, united by oath. You believe respect should be shown when it's earned, not when it's easy. Comment respect below. The major halted in front of the old man's booth. His polished boots reflected the diner's fluorescent lights. His uniform, perfectly pressed, meticulously adorned, stood in stark contrast to the faded jacket that had drawn such mockery in one sharp, fluid motion. He raised his hand in a perfect salute, fingers straight, thumb tucked precisely, arm angled with mathematical precision. Gasps rippled through the diner, the sound of collective shame hitting consciousness. Plates clattered as people froze mid-bite. A fork dropped, the ping against surround, unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. The old man who had endured mockery without reaction slowly stood, his aged frame unfolded with dignity, unexpected from someone so weathered. He returned the salute with perfect form, muscle memory transcending time. Sergeant Caleb Warren, the major's voice firm, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, hero of Kisan. Murmurs swept through the diner like wildfire. Kisan repeated in whispers by those who recognized the name of one of Vietnam's bloodiest battles. The teenagers looked at each other, faces flushing red, phones lowered, smirks vanished. The ground beneath their social standing suddenly unstable. 77 days under siege, the major continued. Sergeant Warren carried 3 men to safety when their position was overrun. Earned the Navy Cross. One of those men was my grandfather. History collapsed into present. Mockery transformed to legacy in 6 sentence. Another uniformed officer entered, carrying a shadow box. Inside, arranged with reverence, medals that most civilians only see in movies or museums. Silver Star, Purple Heart, Combat Action Ribbon, decorations earned in blood. The waitress dropped her notepad and rushed to refill the old man's coffee. Her chair, hands shook. "Now not his on the house, sir," she stammered. "Everything's on the house." A veteran sitting near the counter stood and saluted to his Vietnam-era cap, previously unnoticed, now seemed to glow with significance. One by one, others in the diner rose to their feet, hands over hearts. Those who knew the gesture of respect performed it. Those who didn't simply stood in silent acknowledgement. Even the manager stumbled forward to apologize, words insufficient, but offered nonetheless. "Sir, I didn't realize. Please forgive." The old Marine Sergeant Miles simply nodded. Forgiveness offered without being earned. The major gestured to his convoy outside. "We're here to escort you to the ceremony, Sergeant." "They can't start without the guest of honor." Confusion crossed the old man's face. The new VA hospital wing, the major explained, being named after you today. Didn't you get the letter? Warren shook his head slowly. Mail's been spotty lately, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man who commanded in combat. The laughter was gone, replaced by all the same space transformed by knowledge. The same jacket seen through new eyes. The teenager who mocked him earlier approached with trembling hands. Shame had drained the color from his face. I'm sorry, sir, he whispered, words inadequate but necessary. The old man just nodded, forgiving without needing word, compassion from someone who had seen humanity at its worst and best. Your jacket, another teen said hesitantly. Can I ask about it? Sergeant Miles straightened the worn collar. After Saigon fell, we evacuated refugees. A mother gave me her scarf as thanks. I sewed it inside. He opened the jacket slightly, revealing faded silk beneath the military-issue fabric. Sometimes the most important battles don't earn medals. The diner owner, who had remained silent throughout, emerged from the kitchen. My father was at Quezon, he said, voice breaking. He never talked about it. We rarely do, Miles replied simply. A news crew arrived outside, cameras ready to document the hospital dedication. The major extended his arm. Your chariot awaits, Sergeant. As Miles rose to leave, customers part like a sea. The teenagers who had laughed now stood at attention, an instinctive response to genuine heroism. The jacket, Deep One asked quietly. Why keep it when it's so worn? Warren paused at the door. Because war isn't pretty. Because sacrifice phrase. Because forgetting looks like new fabric when remembering looks like this. He touched the sleeve with reverence. Some things aren't meant to be replaced with that. He walked out into the sunlight, back straight, head high. A warrior still beneath the weight of years and memory. Days later, a new plaque was mounted inside the diner. Bronze letters gleamed against polished wood, not mandated by authority but offered in genuine remorse and respect. It read, in honor of those who wore cloth of our nation. Simple words for complex sacrifice. The booth by the window was reserved permanently. Sergeant Miles' sable, small American flag stood sentry beside the salt and pepper shakers. Fresh flowers appeared there daily. Nobody claimed responsibility, but the teenage girl whose brother served in the Marines was often seen entering the diner before school. The story spread through town like healing fire. Living rooms became forums for long overdue conversations about service and sacrifice. Grandparents who had never spoken of their war experiences began sharing with grandchildren who suddenly wanted to listen. Teenagers from the town began volunteering at the local veterans center. The ringleader of the mockery now spent Saturdays helping veterans navigate technology, his penance becoming purpose. The waitress who had remained silent created a coffee for veterans program, and service member past or present drank free. The major returned, often always sitting quietly near the old man, not for show or ceremony but for conversation only. Warriors truly understand. They spoke of battles, yes, but more often of peace. The harder conquest. Respect became habit, not exception. In those walls, the diner transformed from just another eatery to sacred ground of reckoning and redemption. Military photos appeared on walls previously decorated with generic landscapes. Real history replaced artificial aesthetics. The old man never spoke of the incident when approached for interview by local media. He declined politely. His story wasn't for consumption or clicks. He wore his ragged jacket with quiet pride through summer heat and winter chill. It remained his chosen armor against a world too quick to judge what it didn't understand. And when new kids walked in, he would simply nod, smile, passing down a lesson deeper than any lecture. His presence, a reminder of costs paid for freedoms taken for granted. Sometimes late in the evening, he would sit alone in his reserve booth, tracing the names sewn inside his jacket. Whispered conversations with ghosts who had never grown. The jacket frayed further. He refused him offers to repair it. Some things earn their tears, he told a curious child who asked why he didn't buy a new one. Some things are more beautiful, broken. Time. The town learned to see beyond fabric to the man, beyond the man to the sacrifice, beyond sacrifice to the nation. It served. And in quiet dawns, when the diner was nearly empty, new recruits would sometimes stop by his table before shipping out. They never asked for wisdom or war stories. They simply touched the sleeve of his jacket for luck, for courage, for connection to something larger than themselves. Subscribe to Steelheart Stories if you believe some jackets carry more battles than anyone can see.